Seven o'clock, call the meeting to order. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Rissy.
Here.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Here.
Treasurer Corstond. Here. Trustee Nordike is excused. Trustee Shipley.
Present and accounted for.
Clerk Slater, present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion or discussion for approval of tonight's agenda?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee Rizzi to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 4, Township Board Minutes from June 24th, 2026. Is there discussion or motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as they were recorded of the Township Board meeting 6/24 of 26.
Second.
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Clerk Slater to approve the board meetings and, meeting minutes of Article 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 5, presentations. We have one this evening. Mr. Daniel Veldhuizen is here from Siegfried and Crandall, the public accounting firm that did Cascade Township's annual audit, before we have to present its findings to the Board of Trustee. Before he addresses the board, Manager Smith or Ms. Nencherini, anything you guys want to add or introduce it?
I'll make my comments, I guess. And before it is that I just want to acknowledge and appreciate Lorna, Oksana, Liz, and Bruno in the Finance Department, Treasury Department for their work on the annual audit, working with Dave. I think you'll see that the outcome is really good, but just wanted to acknowledge their efforts.
Lorna, anything you want to introduce or frame before Dan presents the audit to the board?
The township has a great crew with Oksana, Liz, and Bruno. So my kudos to them getting us through this. Thank you.
And I'll just add one thing. This is the township's first year with Siegfried and Crandall, correct? We switched last year after having a different accounting firm for quite a few years, but best practices, it was kind of good to get a fresh set of eyes. So with that, welcome and thank you for coming this evening to present to the board.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for inviting me to your meeting and the opportunity to be your auditors for the first time. I want to reiterate what I just heard, that your accounting staff with Lorna, the rest of her group, we found very capable.
Excuse me, is your mic on? Is it red or green?
Now it's green.
Perfect. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, much better.
Carry on.
Again, thank you for your invitation to the meeting and the opportunity to be your auditors. I was wanting to say that Lorna and her team did a very nice job. I found them to be very capable, knowledgeable, and we enjoyed working with them. By way of introduction, my name is Dan Veldhuizen with Siegfried Crandall. We now audit something like 180 governments, so it's what we do all day, every day, and we primarily work with townships, so and enjoy doing that work. I try not to be the typical accountant and create a PowerPoint for you to get bored with all the numbers, so I plan to be very brief because we spent some time with the Finance Committee earlier this week and got into some of the details. What I think as a board you should hear from your auditor are two primary things. First of all, the auditor communications that we issued 2 different letters, and then make a few brief comments about your financial condition. So I think you all have that report in front of you. I'll just refer to a few pages there. I always like to start with the independent auditor's report, which is the page immediately after the table of contents. This is important because it's what you hired us to do, to give an opinion on the financial statements. In the second paragraph, we give that opinion where we say that the financial statements are presented fairly. That's known as an unmodified or clean opinion. I'll get into that a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily mean everything's perfect and go on. There may be some adjustments or corrections that we had to make. But another important concept I think you should be aware of is near the bottom of that first page of that report, we talk about responsibilities. It's important to me that you know that even though we prepared this document, it's ultimately management's responsibility for the preparation of the financial statements and the internal controls over the checks and balances over your transactions. Going back to the unmodified opinion, that has been very typical for you, but we also issue a management letter, another communication that's not bound in your document. It's a separate letter. And I think you have that in front of you. It's a fairly new requirement that we put in writing about 6 or 8 things, boring things like qualitative aspects of accounting practices. We won't cover that. But on the 3rd page of that letter, there's a section entitled
Excuse me, Dan, the letter is in the back of your audit board, tucked into your audit.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
We always try to hide that from you, if you will.
Good. I like a good challenge.
On the 3rd page of that letter, there's a section labeled Communication Regarding Internal Control. That always generates the most interest. There we define things like material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, terrible sounding terms that I think it's important that you understand completely. We identified some weaknesses related to material audit adjustments. Down below, you can see a number of bullet points where we did make some adjustments, but they really relate to 2 topics. One related to correcting the balances related to investments in a brokerage account that have been set aside a long time ago, and we just needed to help with recording the fair value of those investments. And the other bullet points all relate to the concept of deferred inflows. Not that Lauren and her staff didn't understand that, but it's a relatively new concept, and it's a little difficult for most of the clients that we work with. It relates to special assessments, leases, and a state grant, where in governmental accounting you recognize revenue when it's measurable and available. So really there were 2 adjustments, one related to those investments and one related to the topic of deferred inflows. I think it's important that you know that that's relatively few adjustments. We work with so many townships, and oftentimes I'm making 12 or 24 different adjustments. Your staff had really 2 concepts that we helped them with. So I think that's important that you know. The other area I wanted to discuss was your financial condition. If you would flip to page 15. Page 15 is a picture at a point in time, if you will, of your financial position of all your governmental funds. Just a couple comments there. If you look at the 2nd row from the bottom, the right-hand column, you can see total fund balance of all the township's funds is about $23 million. So that's the fund balance. It's segregated by various restrictions, mostly related to separate restricted millages. The most interesting column is to the right, your general fund, which is your primary operating fund. And the standard question I get from most board members is, what's our fund balance in the general fund, and is that a good number? So you can see the unassigned fund balance in general fund is $8.6 million. I usually compare that to your current year's expenditures. It represents 164% of current expenditures. A lot of governments in the state, well, probably the recommended range is 15 to 25% for a lot of governments. Most townships we work with have about 100% fund balance. And sometimes that's a goal. So 164% is very healthy. And it's always good to have that money set aside, especially in an environment like this, where you can use that to support other things that are going on in the township. If you looked really close at a lot of those numbers, you might be concerned about the library fund balance. It's only $1,000 at the end of the year. But one of the things to remember was the deferred inflow adjustment we made took away about $225,000 of that fund balance. And when you receive that, you'll have that available to spend. So I would say overall, the township is in very strong financial condition, each of its funds and the township as a whole. One more financial topic is on page 54. Depending on where I go, sometimes the liability of the defined benefit plan is a significant concern. Sometimes we're not aware of what it looks like. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that. There's a lot of information there for the last 10 years, but you'll see that the total pension liability is about $15.6 million. MERS has set aside about 10.5 million. So your liability is 5,027,000. People often look at that as a percentage of funding, and yours is about 68%, which has shown a nice trend of increasing over the last few years. The state likes to see at least a 60% funding where it's considered underfunded. So I think you're on the right track there. With the Finance Committee, we actually talked about maybe making additional contributions to that to get the funding up to the 80% funding that MERS likes to have. We talked about a number of things the other day and got into some details that I don't think are necessary to talk about here, but I'd be very glad to answer any questions that you have right now, and we're always available throughout the year. But I would just summarize things by saying Township is really very financially healthy, and that tells me that you've all, as a board, done a nice job of managing your funds, and you have a good staff that's very capable and knowledgeable. So you should be complimented on the results of the audit.
More of a question for Lorna and Jade. When and where will the full audit and company letters be available for the public?
That's a great question. If you actually go to the finance department or the finance page on our website, under financial reports, all of the historical data is there, our budgets and our audits. Debt services is included on there as well. This one isn't on there yet. It'll be on there after tonight's presentation.
Questions for the expert while we have him here?
I think I know the answer to part of this, but I'll just go ahead and ask. What would you say our biggest strength is right now? And then obviously on the opposite of that, what would you look at as a weakness that we could focus on?
That's an excellent question. I've often thought about those questions related to an interview, but never related to somebody's statements. I would say we audit most of the townships in Kent County. You probably have enough resources available to do quite a variety of good things. So the financial strength is your strength. You also, we didn't touch on it, but the DDA, which is really a separate entity component unit, also does a lot of good things and has money available too. So the financial strength stands out to me. The thing you need to work on, we talked about in the Finance Committee the other day, maybe just improving efficiencies within the accounting department. Lorna is relatively new, and she has ideas to how to make things better, make some improvements there. And we, as auditors, we would love to see things like, an example is you probably have 52 bank accounts in all these different funds. Most governments that I work with have one pooled checking arrangement, which would make things a whole lot easier for a variety of reasons. So we talked about that the other day, and I think that's a long-term goal.
I think our treasurers brought that up before too. So
Many times. We're getting there.
I've heard
We had
that.
more. We told you. We
Yes,
had
yes.
more.
Should have seen the number of accounts in the internal processes before we had Jade and Lorna.
Yeah.
Just takes time.
Maybe
Yes.
the former staff or board was getting suckers every time they went and opened a new account. You know?
Somebody.
I will give them a gold star if they limit it to one checking account that we have to limit.
Good goal for next year.
So I have a question about the DDA. There's talk of a bond. I think we had it at our last meeting. It's going to be a $17 million bond. You know, we're not sure what the rate would be. Could easily be a $1.2 million payment per year, and it looks like they bring in about 1.6. Are they going to be able to continue doing all the good things and responsibilities of a DDA for the next 25 years at $400,000 a year or $350,000 a year?
We bring over $2 million a year in revenue from the DDA.
Okay, my question.
There are substantial captures from other entities for the DDA, and that's where most of your funding comes from. A lot of it comes from your separate restricted millages. So based on the numbers that you gave with the debt service, you would have sufficient funds to cover the debt service. Obviously, there would be more limitations on the projects that you could do, but the $17 million bond is going to do a lot for you, I would think. So without running the numbers and looking at it more carefully, it'd be hard for me to say if you can do that for 20, 25 years. But based on what you said, I would think that the DDA could fund that. There is a possibility of the DDA levying a millage, which would easily cover that. But I heard the other day that that's not something that the board probably wants to do. That just puts more taxes on the residents. So, yeah, without looking at it carefully, it's hard to say.
I'm also looking at the possibilities, real possibilities of adding possibly 2 fire stations over the next 25 years. How would that factor in with the 17 million? Obviously going to have to bond for fire stations.
You would have to do that. In that case, you'd have to,
Be under the DDA.
It would be on our total credit as a township.
if you were to, spend that kind of money, you would have to issue bonds and probably increase millage rates.
Is there a plan to do 2 fire stations in the next couple of years that I don't know about?
25 years.
Is
Just
there a
wondering.
plan for that? Because I
Well,
don't
we-
aware of it.
I heard possibly one, because we
Just
have
wondering.
2.
We have a facility studies going on right now. I'll have to
Did
see
that,
what it comes
did
back
that make
with.
a recommendation for 2 new
I
fire
haven't
stations?
seen it yet,
Okay.
but I know the last facility study said that we needed to have a fire station built, I think a decade ago. We haven't built that one yet.
Right,
so
and that was
we're a little
because-
behind.
Making
Right,
some
and
big
that was
assumptions.
under the previous board, and that was because the previous board's master plan called for expanding industrial development east of the airport. And to coincide with that industrial development that was in our master plan that they were planning on, it was anticipated that because of that growth, there would be a need for Fire Station 3 over near the airport.
Well, that was for the south and west side of the airport, not
Right.
the east side.
And that's where that plan called for the anticipated 3rd fire station.
If you look at that study, the last facility study, all the results of that study as far as population and growth and everything was spot on. I mean, they did a really good job of looking into the future and saying, this is where you're going to be in 2020.
And
We were there.
And that facility study was done primarily in anticipation of the new Fire Station 1. The talk of the 3rd fire station among the firefighters and stuff was based on the previous board's plan to allow industrial expansion on the airport. Hence, the 3rd fire station was anticipated to be around the airport to cover that new. This board of trustees stopped that, changed the master plan to not allow that industrial sprawl into rural areas and residential areas. And hence, we have not had the need, nor have there been any current discussions about a 3rd fire station near the airport.
You're saying we won't have 2 new fire stations in 25
No,
years?
and I'm also not saying that I can't predict that a comet won't come down and hit the Wisner Center, but I'm just saying if you want to do scare tactics, you should be
I'm not trying to do
factual.
a scare tactic. I'm just saying from 25 years, we have to think about fire stations. That's all I'm saying.
And the
It's
DDA
on our credit, and the downtown development, 17 million is going to be on our credit. Plus, we have several other things going, parks and.
I think
I'm just,
Lauren-
I'm
think
saying we're
Timmy's right.
spending a lot
You-
of money. We need to be careful.
Lorna?
Station 2 is not in great shape.
Lorna, no, absolutely. Lorna, question for you. Did the board's action last week, the board's actions, commit the township to issuing a $17 million bond?
No, what was authorized 2 weeks ago was a not to exceed 17 million as a published amount. And there's been no direct discussion of or development of a specific number yet. The construction hasn't been bid out yet.
Have specific projects and expenses at all come in front of the DDA or the board towards that 17 million for approval?
Sorry,
Or what?
conceptual for Tassel Park, but right now at the concept stage.
Well, no, I need to clarify that. Yes, there have been, and there's been some directed by this board, which was the purchase of additional property, which part of that bonding process was to pay that back.
The Verberg's property,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then some of the design work that's happening now will all be reimburse from that bond proceeds.
But is it accurate to say that we just issued a $17 million bond or committed the township or the DDA to $17 million?
No, the language in the letter, the intent was up to, and this just started the referendum period. It did not commit the township to anything.
It's a not to exceed amount, correct?
Correct.
And again, all of that specifically deals with DDA funds.
Well, it deals with the DDA funds, but it is correct. It is the township's credit that the bond rating that is being used
Yes.
on the market. Or Lorna can speak to that more fluently than I can.
All I'm saying is we're spending a lot of money. This is 6 new boards that will have to deal with this 25-year bond. So I'm just saying we got to be careful what we're doing. There's several things this community is going to need over the next 20. I just want to be cautious, and I want this man's opinion where we're at here. Because it's all going on township credit.
Recently, we received 10 years of figures of what the DDA projects the DDA has done in the last 10 years. And if you look at that and you back transportation out of it, it's like $750,000 a year on average over the course of the 10 years. And that's a pretty significant kick in for projects and stuff. And so my concern would be that if we were to maximize that allotment, say we bonded 15 or 17 million dollars, I think it's going to be very difficult for the DDA to make that commitment on a regular basis moving forward, which I think over the course of 25 years would have a significant impact in our village.
What is the DDA's annual revenue? And again, that's a tax capture from the designated DDA district for local business that is required by law to be reinvested in the specific downtown area. Or
his audit showed 1.6, I thought.
1.7 million in revenues this year if you include interest. The captures are 1.6 million.
Thank you.
Which tends to grow pretty substantially every year.
Page 6, financial highlights, since those two trustees seem to have expressed some concerns that we're spending a lot of money. It says the township's net total position increased by $2,186,664. That's a 4.3% as a result of this year's activities. Lorna, Jade, or Dan, could you elaborate on that a little bit, what that means? Is it a general fund balance increase?
You want to take that, Lorna?
I'm looking for the sentence now, Supervisor.
Page 6, financial highlights.
I can address that if you like.
That would be wonderful, Dan. Thank you.
That represents the increase in net position of the entire township. So we look at all of your funds and do fund statements and then combine that all into what we call government activities. So the 2.1 million is an increase in net position or equity of the township as a whole. Last year, it actually increased by 5.3 million, very substantial increase. A lot of that was because of some unique grants that were received last year. So it appears that that 2 million increase is fairly typical, not having been here that long, but yeah, that is for the township as a whole. And as I mentioned before, the general fund has a very healthy fund balance. If you look at each of the funds, they're all really quite healthy, with the exception of what I mentioned, the library fund right now. That seems like a concern, but it's not.
And I see that.
Am I right in saying that on page 17 shows, I think, what the supervisor was asking? First column under general fund shows that the net change in fund balance for the general fund last year was $1.7 million increase.
That is true for the general fund, yes.
And with that increase in a fund balance, was there any decrease in services provided to residents or businesses?
No.
So good work with the internal efficiencies, Jade and Lorna. We didn't have that type of increase until we had the right staff on board. You mentioned that the general fund balance, which is unassigned, unlike the restricted balances from the fire fund, library fund, public safety fund, is 8.629 million roughly. Lorna, how many months of operating costs would that cover? Roughly.
That would be 1 year plus 64%. So I'd say 1 year and 8 months.
As far as like, you've been in this government accounting for a long time, recommendations? Is that a good amount, too much, too little? What are your thoughts on that as far as where we're at?
Looks darn good to me, Supervisor.
Is it excessive? Like the township has so much extra money, we need to start writing checks back to the people, or what? Because that's another thing. You have so much.
If I could jump in, as our auditor mentioned, we are sitting on a balance that gives us flexibility in terms of devoting dollars to large projects. So I think we're in an enviable position of being able to fund awesome concepts, awesome projects.
And I think that can be part of a bigger conversation. We work into our CIP timeline, and then also going into next year's budget, we can talk the fund balance.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Van Huysen, but also Lorna, Jade, and then the staff you have working under you. I know you guys have worked really hard over the past couple of years and done a lot of internal process improvements that have made a big difference for the residents of Cascade. So thank you. It's a pretty boring, tedious topic, and most of us don't know enough to ask intelligent questions, but I see what you guys are doing, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Additional questions for him while we have him here? Comments?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for your time.
And Jade, what is the next board action? What does the board do with this financial audit that was presented?
There's actually nothing formally that you need to do, but it is on your consent calendar to receive and file. And then I know there's requirements to report it to the state, but I'll let Lorna talk about the details of that if she feels necessary.
Actually, we had a lot of legal deadlines by June 30th. So all reporting was filed on time and accurately. And in fact, in the last biweekly update, the board should have received a separate document, a Form 5572, which is legally required by the state in Public Act to be submitted to the board electronically, which is why you didn't receive it via paper. And that gets back to the defined benefit retirement plan funding that our auditor had mentioned is at 68%. It's all good.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here this evening in person, and thanks for taking us on as a new client. Next up, public comments related to anything on tonight's agenda. We have a relatively light agenda, so the only public comment appropriate would be related to the October 9th, 2026 Forest Hill Central Homecoming Parade, the road closure relating to that. So with that, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. State your name and address for record keeping, and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Rhonda. I am a resident of Lowell Township. And I would assume that the approval of last month's minutes as well as the financial accounting audit would be also appropriate, correct?
Yes, yes.
So I'd like to note that your township minutes have agenda comments from the public. Only list the public person's name and address. One, I'd like to bring up that for some people, actually having their address documented on this may impact their public safety. So that publishing that information on this document may not long-term be a wise idea. You also do not include anything related to the public's actual comments, what they're regarding or anything. I would like to refer you to Lowell Township now actually includes a brief summary of each person's comments, including meetings that sometimes have over 50 to 75 people commenting at any single public comment period. I would like to address and thank, since I did not realize that this board actually met bi-weekly instead of monthly like most townships, that one of your township residents that was here brought up a comment that was made to me regarding my comments the previous month from Mr. Scott Rissy, saying that his property that he owns in Lowell Township under two separate, one personal identity and one corporate identity, were not, that he did not have a purchase agreement, which I never stated. I said there was a plan to sell to Microsoft. And he denied this to me after the meeting. However, I would like to submit the Lowell Charter Township Planning Commission application for rezoning for these two properties that specifically state that the parcel is expected to be consolidated with adjacent parcels for development of a data center. Please see accompanying documents, of which the conditional rezoning says Microsoft, the proposed purchaser of the property. So to say that there is no agreement or plan to sell these properties at this point is false. The way he tried to spin this is manipulative, and I would like to thank you for your time, and I will submit these printed documents for you.
Thank you. Regarding the record keeping of the township board meetings, that falls under the jurisdiction of our township clerk, who I understand has been following legal advice about what's stored of records and in detail. I understand your concern. Just to alleviate that, or to fully explain, all of the board meetings, entirely past and live, are available on our website to watch in full, the good and the bad. So residents' comments, everything are available on our website. You can watch it actually as it occurred. Any other public comments?
This may take 30 seconds, so you tell me if it's allowed, or do I tie it? You guys, and during the presentation, mentioned bonds and millages. Can I have 30 seconds? Talk about bonds and millages. One of the tactics that, yeah, well, this is pretty quick because I didn't come here for this, but it was brought up.
Hold on. Yeah, as long as it's related to the, I mean, just
audit agenda.
It was on an audit. He mentioned bonds and millages.
Clearly, my property wasn't on, but
no, the meeting
we're gonna,
minutes.
I mean, so now we've opened Pandora's box.
So
I could use it at the end, but it's maybe 30 seconds is all.
We just have the road closure. So,
Okay.
So that'll be brief, and then you're welcome to have
All right.
3 minutes at the
So
end.
you're gonna stop him, but it's okay to talk about the other stuff.
Well,
I don't think that was
one. I didn't know
fair
what
to
she
the
was
residents.
talking. She's talking about the meeting minutes from the prior meeting, which were approved in the packet. So,
But he's talking about financial stuff, and we just had a report on it.
but nothing specific. He said to talk about bonds, and we'll get there.
Okay.
If I was
All right.
wrong, I apologize.
That's fine.
But what I don't want to
You
do
can
is
wait till
open
the
up,
end.
open up a Pandora's box, which is what I used to do when I first started. I've become a lot meaner. Any other comments on the road closure, prior meeting minutes that are approved, or anything on the agenda? Article 7, approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion or discussion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as part of our records.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, seconded by treasurer Corsange to approve the consent agenda, including the fiscal year 2025 financial audit. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 8, financial actions, specifically the invoices scheduled to be paid tomorrow on the 9th. Is there a motion or discussion?
Make a motion to approve financial actions.
Support.
It's a motion by treasurer Corsange, supported by trustee Nordhook to approve tonight's financial actions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Having no unfinished business, first and only item of new business, resolution 027-2026, specifically a resolution proposing closing the road on October 9th, 2026 from 5 to 6 p.m. for the Forest Hills Central Homecoming Parade. Manager Smith.
Thank you, Supervisor. As you mentioned, we've been asked to bring before you a resolution to close the roads on October 9th, 2026 from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. for the Forest Hills Central High School homecoming parade. There's just a small part of the route that goes into Cascade. Most of it is by the high school. So you have the map in your packet. The one thing you do not have in your packet that was sent to us after peace of mind is we do have their insurance coverage that was forwarded to us. So we've ran this through all the departments and looking to see if you will approve the resolution for them to host the homecoming parade.
Just one question, Manager Smith, have you received any negative comments from residents that will be affected by it?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Slightly off topic, but Forest Hills Central's band, I hope they come back to Cascade Township for the 4th of July because Ada's got Forest Hills Eastern too. So we need the music like we've had in past years. I don't know if you could mention that when we mentioned giving them the road closure.
I think
Do it.
I'll mention that to
Might as well
somebody.
use the clout that you've got, Jade. Trustee Shipley?
I make a motion to accept the resolution 027-2026 to close the roads on Friday, October 9th from approximately 1700 to 1800 for Forest Hills Central Homecoming Parade, in as much as there has been no negative comments from the residents.
Support.
That's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Treasurer Corsange to approve the roads closure resolution as presented. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Treasurer Corsange.
Yes.
Trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Trustee Rissy.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook.
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Les Prince.
Yes, motion carried.
Supervisor, can I make a quick comment?
Yep.
Do you think if we denied the road closure, they would go back to the old route?
You think if we deny the road closure that GRAR and Michigan Realtors and other real estate special interest groups would spend $99,000 going around to collect signatures to get it on the ballot on August 4th?
I don't know if they really care about the road, but maybe.
I don't know.
They do
No,
like
they just
the
care
old
about
route.
they just care about density in the village and the remaining rural areas.
Oh, you did.
Next up, public comments, Article 12. Any comments, whether the item was on tonight's agenda or not? Again, 3-minute limitation for the fairness of everybody, all residents that are here and not here. With that, welcome.
Hi, my name is Doug Lee. I live at 8613 52nd Street. One comment on millages and bonds. There's a tendency across the state that municipalities do off elections for passage of bonds. I think that moving forward, you guys should always, if you're going to ask taxpayers for money, you need to do it in a November election because 12% does not represent the majority of people. So you guys do get to decide when you put things on the ballots. And I would recommend if you ever come to a taxpayer for anything, it goes on November. I wanted to come here today because it's fresh. It's on everybody's mind. It's the Cascade Parade. I participated 31 years in the Cascade Parade. So that's a long time and a long history. And I have been a huge opponent of the Cascade Parade. I used to tell people one of the largest parades in the state. I could never put enough candy in whatever I did to finish beyond Co-America. It just was impossible. One of the comments that I heard on this is, well, we're losing to Ada, and there's always this rivalry. We're not losing to Ada. We're losing because we can do better, and it's because of our planning of our 4th of July parade. Okay. I just went back cursively after I was hugely disappointed by the length of this parade. It was hugely disappointing to me. We haven't had an Instagram post since August of 25th. We have virtually no TikTok influence, which is what people use. Our Facebook, we had more exposure on the closing of the office on July 3rd than the 4th of July. In order to get a ban here, somebody has to proactively make a phone call. I mean, that's the way it used to be done. It wasn't like, will they come? No, somebody's in charge of actually making and proactively getting businesses and entities to participate in the parade. That obviously wasn't done because our parade was the shortest I've ever seen it. Now, I'm not recommended by no means that we hire somebody to do parades. I don't want to add any staff or any extra taxpayer dollars. I think we have plenty of staff to make this a responsibility of the people that are getting paid currently. Or at a minimum, I'd be willing to consult for free. 30 years in this thing, we could restore the Cascade Parade, and it's not Ada. Don't let think that Ada's pulling people away by their new, what they're doing over there. Cascade people, this side of the Camelback Bridge is still Cascade, and we participate in if we do it right. It just needs to be planned better. So I know we can do better than that. I want to do better than that. I don't want to see this again. I want to go back to the way it was one of the biggest parades in the state. Okay, we can do that. We just have to be proactive. Okay, and there's many ways to do that. So that was really my comment. I just wanted, it's fresh. We should have some way to be able to communicate that and have that. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, ma'am, before you comment, I went back and looked at the last meeting minutes, and I want to apologize to Trustee Rizzi. That issue was not addressed in those, so you are welcome to comment on anything you want at this point. But I should not have allowed, I apologize, but I shouldn't have allowed those the first time. So to be fair, you may be under some heat right now, but that's my bad for allowing that earlier. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for the apology.
So my name is Nicole Rhonda. I am a Lowell Township resident. And that actually falls under the meeting minutes because with my comment on the other Scott gentleman that I do not remember his last name actually commented regarding that issue during his public comment period. That was why I mentioned that also. So yes, I am against data centers. I am very upset that Trustee Rissy is talking about how he wants to okay, Trustee Nordhook, I'd love to actually see your face and you not, put your head in your hands at me speaking when you can't do math and see that $2.2 million minus a payment of $1.2 million on bonds being issued equals a positive result. And also the Trustee Corsang 4 weeks ago when I was here, you were rolling your eyes and laughing at her after you made erroneous comments about, the people against this zoning issue can't use public funds. Actually, they can because KDL here offers 50 free copies for every resident that holds a library card every week. So they can make their flyers at the public institutions all they want at $50 a week for each person that shows up. So please do not roll your eyes, put your head in your hands, and disrespect the amount of disrespect I've seen from Trustee Rissy and Trustee Nordhook, especially to the female members on this board, is absolutely ridiculous. And though I do agree that something regarding the millages and bond proposals does apply to tonight's agenda, the disrespect that you show your compatriots is absolutely horrendous. The disrespect you show your community and the example you set is despicable because you're fine saying, I'll sell my land to Microsoft as long as it's not in my township. Yet there are Cascade residents up against our Lowell Township line that are crying out saying they don't want this, yet you're willing to go along with it.
Thank you.
In our land. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Richardson. I live at 3438 North Applecrest. I wanted to come and give my thoughts on the zoning referendum coming up 4 weeks from today. I intend to vote yes, and I encourage Cascade voters to vote in support of the new zoning ordinance. I'll give two main reasons. First of all, it supports the evolution of the village area towards a walkable downtown. That is a high priority of residents, along with, you know, a more walkable township. And so I see this as responsive to that priority that they have. And I think that's valuable to the township. The second is it does allow some increased residential development in certain areas, particularly where it's necessary in the village, because residential in a village area is necessary for it to become a walkable downtown area. And I think the style of residential that's allowed there and is reasonable for that area, with having, you know, 2-unit buildings by right, and then special approval for multifamily units on the fringes of the village area. This is similar to what Ada has done with their redevelopment. So I think that's a good approach. And also additional residential allowed in some of the overlays in the commercial areas, in addition to just Centennial, where it's been there since, for all 24 years I've lived in Cascade. Now, it's not perfect, and I have views about additional things that could be done, and hopefully can be done after this is passed next month. First of all, I think it's worthwhile to have a comprehensive understanding of what the housing needs are in Cascade, and use that as a baseline for additional, you know, zoning changes to support the needed housing here. And just my own non-studied opinions, but I feel like there would be some, first of all, room to increase density in the residential areas close to the village to help support additional residential in that walking area. And the second thing, in reviewing the zoning and looking at that map, I see all this R1 area west of the river and inside the utility zone. And I don't know why that isn't the denser R2 zoning. So I think that would be a reasonable thing to consider doing. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your feedback.
Hi there, Scott Vince Alkman again. I'm going to directly address Trustees Rissi and Nordhook regarding comments made towards me at the last meeting during trustee comments. Let me be clear. When I stand at this podium, I am not always speaking to the board. I am speaking to the residents, the viewers, and the people who depend on these meetings to understand what's actually happening in this township. My purpose is to call out what I believe were misleading statements, omissions, and half-truths, particularly in the March 10th email sent out by 3 trustees that coincided with paid petition circulators approaching residents with incomplete or inaccurate information about the new zoning ordinance. You may say this is now in the hands of the voters, and that is true, but that does not remove the responsibility to be accurate and transparent. Most residents are not following these meetings closely, and they deserve to hear more than one version of events, especially when selective narratives are being promoted that align with and benefit the interests of realtors, developers, and those who stand to gain financially from shaping that outcome. I have already used my limited time at previous meetings to address multiple claims point by point, including accessory buildings, AI data centers, private roads, tree removal requirements for parcels larger than 3 acres, and even the claim about buildings being allowed as close as 4 feet from Cascade Road. These are not minor details. They go directly to the credibility of what residents were told. And let's acknowledge the imbalance in this process. Trustees sitting on this dais have the ability to pontificate at length about whatever they choose, often without meaningful time constraints, while residents are limited to just 3 minutes to speak on any issue we feel is important. That makes it critical that those 3 minutes are used to bring forward information that might otherwise be left out or uncorrected. Trustee Nordhook, regarding your comments about roof pitch, building height, and garage dimensions, your example of an 8-foot garage door may have technically been correct in isolation, but it did not reflect the full reality of the ordinance. What was not mentioned is that the new zoning, like the old zoning, provides clear pathways for flexibility through appeals, variances, and special land use approvals through the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Commission. There is a process, just as there always has been. Currently, any accessory building over 832 square feet needs those processes. You also raised concerns related to bees. It is important to be clear. Bees are a vital part of our ecosystem and the pollination of flowers and trees. Simply put, their disappearance would be devastating from a biological, societal, and economic standpoint. If we lose bees, We lose far more than honey. Our crops, ecosystems, and food systems depend on their pollination. The updated ordinance streamlines requirements for smaller parcels while still allowing reasonable accommodations where strict standards cannot be met. And like every zoning ordinance before it, it is not static. It can and will be amended as real-world issues arise. My goal here is simple: to make sure residents have complete and accurate information, not selective narratives driven by financial interests, so they can make an informed decision. Thank you. Preserve Cascade, vote yes.com.
Thank you.
Josh, you know where I live. Could we have the windbreakers on retainer? That's it. That's my thing for today. I mean, that was awesome. I love Yacht Rock. It's my favorite. So Jade, make that happen.
That's not what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you. Or I might have it reversed. Any other comments, either in person or virtually? Manager comments.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just a couple of things. I do want to acknowledge the parade this year, and I've talked with our Parks and Facilities Director and our Fire Chief. I know they're doing a wrap-up meeting that I wasn't able to attend, but we are going to look at how we can address some of the attendance of the parade moving forward. I also want to acknowledge the concert last week. We had over 400 people attend the Windbreakers concert at Friendship Park, which is our biggest attendance so far. If you saw some photos, which there'll be some updates in the newsletter and on Facebook, it was a great sight to see. So kudos to Dan and bringing in a band that really brought the residents out to the park. So, and this has been climbing ever since they introduced these concerts last year. So we're real happy with how that is progressing. And that's all I have tonight.
Trustee comments? Trustee Shipley.
Sure. First of all, thanks for coming, folks. Always appreciate it. Bring your neighbors. Doug, Ken, Nicole, Scott, Nick, Tom, and Josh, thanks for coming. I want to hear from you guys like I do all the residents of the township, pros and cons. Couple little things. I had a call last week from a resident that was really kind of concerned and upset. He couldn't find anybody to come out and help with a fawn that was paralyzed and laying in the backyard. He tried the Humane Society, the Sheriff Department, tried everyone, and including the two wildlife rescue centers, and they all went, can't help you, click. And I think that's kind of a letdown for our residents, because as we get more critters around here, we're going to have increased calls about injured or animals that need help. Township parks heavily used again last week. I've talked about this at the last couple meetings. They were packed, and I'm glad to see that they're packed. Part of the reason is, number one, we have good parks. Can we improve them? Yes, we can. Number two, I think that we have fantastic grounds and buildings department. And at this time, I'd also like to acknowledge Jade and his entire staff. I heard from 3 different residents in the past 4 days, and they all said they went away from the township office feeling as well as their questions and concerns were addressed, and they were very happy with your staff. So keep up the good job. Nationwide, disinformation is rampant all over the place. I remember a time when I used to believe our national leaders and say that's got to be true because the president said that or the governor said something. Unfortunately, as an individual, I have to do the research myself and find out what's true and what's not true. It's more difficult to do that today than ever before. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, I was watching the news and I asked Jade, I said, City of Grand Rapids residents want 2 intersections with traffic lights added to them, Kalamazoo and Adams and Giddings down there. $800,000 per traffic light. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. I'm in the wrong business. I ought to be painting old lights with yellow and hanging them up in the intersection. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Rizzi.
Thank you. I wanted to give a shout out to our staff. 4th of July Independence Day celebration. Everybody has been really happy with the way that went. I don't understand attendance was a little low, but as far as the setup and the tear down and helping everyone, I heard from the Grand Marshal, who he wanted to express that he was very, very proud to be and humbled to be in that position. He felt that he wasn't sure he deserved it based on some of the names on the past list, but he said that our staff was phenomenal in working with him in that process and made him feel really happy. He had family come in from the West Coast to watch, so it was a big deal for them. But again, he had really appreciated our staff, and they pulled out all the stops for him. Then to switch gears a little bit, accessory buildings. Some clarification. I served on the planning commission for 10 years, and I've had a little bit of experience in how the process for accessory buildings works. Over 832 square feet, you're correct, Scott. You get a opportunity to get a special use permit under the current zoning, and that triggers that your neighbors within 300 feet will receive a letter if you make that application for that. And then they get an opportunity to come in this room to see the planning commission and have a public hearing. At that public hearing, the planning commission has the ability, because it's a special use permit, to put conditions on the approval of said building. So you may say, well, I don't want my neighbor to have it there. It's too close to the road, or it blocks my view. Maybe there should be a berm with trees. Those are all reasonable conditions that could be added. The new ordinance does not allow for the process of a special use permit. It's not there. So you can't say that it's the same, because it's not. They would have to go in front of the ZBA and get a variance, and that's a completely different path and much stricter rules in how it's approved. The other thing I wanted to mention real quickly is I had somebody reach out to me. Apparently there's been some comments made by some board members regarding drive-throughs. We currently do not allow drive-through restaurants in the village. So the old zoning prevents drive-throughs in the village as far as restaurants are concerned. The new zoning does as well. But to say that we're going to have them if we don't change ordinances is not accurate. So we do have one drive-through restaurant, and that slipped in by mistake because in a whirlwind of change in the township, it happened. We do? What's the second one? Starbucks does not prepare food. They just reheat it. So that's not, Culver's isn't technically in the village boundary. So, but Starbucks was approved because it was a drive-through, but it did fit the definition of a restaurant, and we only banned restaurants in the area, drive-through restaurants.
Once again, why
I didn't write the definition. I'm just saying what,
that's what's in the previous zoning that we support.
We don't.
No,
He
I'm
does.
just being sarcastic.
All right. I'll rest for now. Thank you.
Trustee Nordhook.
Just a clarification for Ms. Lowell. I'm having some issues with a cataract surgeries, and my eyes are really itching, so that's what's happening there.
Clerk Slater.
No comments.
Treasurer Corstage.
Yeah, I've got a couple things written out from different comments from residents and some other things that were said. So first, I would like to thank staff as well, for all staff, not just the concert, but I did get a message from a resident specifically thanking planning and finance staff for some specific questions that they had. It was an elderly gentleman, and he was really appreciative for the patience that people took to explain things to him thoroughly and the time that they took to do that. They didn't feel rushed, and they were very thankful. So appreciate that. Second part with staff is the concert. Did attend. It was wonderful to see that many people there. The best part was to see little kids that were little toddlers all the way up to senior citizens standing up dancing during the concert. It was really a really special thing for the community, and just really appreciate it. So, two, I guess I have a question for Mike since you're here.
I'm ready.
You ready? how many other communities that you help use special use permits for accessory buildings?
None that I can think of off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
Is it standard practice, in your opinion, to use? I mean, the name itself, a special use building or a permit for an accessory building, you're not really using it specially. You're not running a drive-through out of your accessory building, which would require a special use. The fact that our current zoning requires residents to pay for and request a special use to get a accessory building above what the zoning would ask is that standard practice?
Not generally. What generally happens is you've got, those uses that are permitted by right and those uses that are permitted by special use permit. But generally speaking, there's an entirely different section that will govern accessory buildings or uses, right? Those buildings or uses incidental to the primary use. So let's talk about residential, because generally that's what we're talking about on accessory buildings. Then you have those standards for those various residential districts, right? They have setbacks for those accessory buildings, size limitations, height limitations, right? Those are all standard functions. The problem sometimes with requiring special use permits is it gives too much unfettered discretion on how you apply standards to those. So you run into, or can run into, a problem with some selective enforcement without any particularized standards for that. And that's where we get
when you know people and you come to a planning commission meeting and say that this special use permit should be approved because you've known this person for 35 years, not because of any actual reasons why.
Yeah, well, look, zoning doesn't depend on ownership.
Exactly.
Okay, it depends on, simply characteristics of the property, uses of the property, building locations, and height, and other standards. In fact, there are many cases out there that talks about special uses and particularized standards that must be applied to those special uses, because otherwise it introduces too much discretion in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Trustee Rissy that special use permits can be approved utilizing reasonable conditions as to those uses. But where you have defined standards for approval, it generally fits into this category, which is, okay, if you meet these standards, it's set back this far, can't be too close to this, or height standards or area, it shall be approved. And so, but there are reasonable conditions sometimes that you attach to other special use permits, like hours of operation, dust, noise, right? Those things that are not possible to necessarily define at the time because they have or could have an adverse impact on adjacent properties depending on the activity going on,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the structure itself.
Right. So, and also in our current zoning, while we're talking about that, privacy fences are also a special use
Currently?
currently. Has the township been sued because of special uses that were maybe granted to one person and not the next in the same meeting?
Well, I wouldn't call it, I'm going to differ with terms.
Mm-hmm.
There was an appeal of a decision to the circuit court. So to the extent you characterize that as a lawsuit,
Right.
Technically it's an appeal from
Right.
the decision.
But that's because specific standards were not uniformly used within both circumstances, just like you're talking about with accessory buildings, which would be the appropriate way to apply a special use, to have specific standards that you apply to everybody.
Yeah, I will say the township obviously prevailed in the case that we're talking about in terms of a fence. However, there was some, I suppose, criticism of the manner in which there were findings relative to the denial of that right, because it was treated almost like a variance request, really. And so that's why it's better to have sort of uniform standards, because then there is a provision for variance requests. Those always go to the zoning board of appeals. That's what they're equipped to do.
Okay. And then that was all for you, I think. Sorry. I just have a couple more different things. Just some online social media stuff that's been going on. I think it's frustrating to hear that a lot of residents are confused with the zoning proposals and what yes means and what no means, and that we do not have open houses or any. I know residents can call and talk to staff, but it's unfortunate that given the circumstances and some of the drama that's been caused by the vote no side, I guess, that we do not have specific open houses. They were canceled. I just find that very unfortunate, just based on the amount of comments of residents that are confused with what's happening. And I think the truth really helps people to make the right decisions. Accessory building, there was a comment last week about the max roof height that the new zoning moves to, and that we're quote rewriting the building code, which those are two totally separate things. We're not rewriting the building code. And I do just want to make the comment that there are other communities. We did speak with the consulting group, planning consulting group that helped with the new zoning, to ask them, is there a standard within the industry of whether we should do midpoint of the roof versus max roof height? And they said it was completely a decision of the community, that they have communities all over the state of Michigan that they serve. Some do one way, some do another. There is no standard. And just to know, a couple of communities near us, the village of Caledonia uses max roof height, and the village, or the Ada Township, does as well for some of their accessory buildings, the smaller accessory buildings, they use that as well. And then the fourth thing I have is just thank you, Tom, for reading through the new zoning. Your comments were spot on. I do think that I am happy that you understand the utility borders and the density, and where density is appropriate within our community because of utilities. And most people know we have some PFAS areas within the community, and those utility borders are really important. And I think that was part of the long-term strategy with the strategic plan, the master plan, and then the zoning. So thanks, Tom.
That's it. Okay. One, I want to thank Mr. Lee for the comments about the parade, helpful and appreciated. And also Mr. Richardson, helpful, appreciated. It's time consuming and detailed, but to come in person, one, to pay attention, and two, to come in person and share your thoughts, very much appreciated. And I know you're absolutely right. It's going to need modifications, and we're not all going to agree on everything. And we haven't always agreed on everything in the past, but taking the politics out of this, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and accurate comments. It's really not a partisan issue. It's what's best for residents, and it's important that people pay attention. And then zoning, the hot topic, a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, and a lot of special interest money from real estate groups such as GRAR and Michigan Realtors, and then private developers and realtors who are funding a massive vote no campaign based on many inaccuracies. And I want to hit on a couple of those. One, I've heard from multiple residents, the new zoning is trying to make us look like Ada. That's a valid concern. People are concerned about the height, the large expansive buildings, and the lack of traffic. One, we deliberately did certain things in the new zoning to ensure that we stop the 28th Street sprawl as far as drive-throughs and strip malls, and also high density apartment complexes in this village area. But two, also not go the route of Ada, however nice it is, and many good things about it. But as far as how far they've gone, specifically the new current zoning has 4 parts of it that are critical to ensuring that we don't that we strike a balance. One, buildings are limited to 35 feet in height. That's a max of 2.5 stories. That is not a high rise as described by Trustee Nordhook. Two, lots cannot be combined for larger lots and also then larger buildings, as is allowed in Ada, where you've got very large buildings that are all one but built to look like separate buildings. That is not allowed in the current zoning. Three, this current zoning requires that first floor of the new, and again, this only applies to new developments and redevelopments, despite what the special interest real estate groups are saying. This only applies to new developments in the village area as things turn over. The first floor commercial requirement in this small village area is important because it preserves local businesses, and it also ensures that we don't have high density apartment complexes or just apartment complexes in this small village area, because that's where the money's at right now for redevelopers. The money is in that, and that's what they want. And this new, you can do that in other areas, but you can't do this in a small village core, because again, one of the main resident goals was walkability. 4, parking. Ada reduced or slashed at least in half, roughly, their parking requirements. This new zoning does not reduce the parking requirements. So whatever the standard practice is in planning, we maintain those parking requirements so that we won't have the parking shortage that we see in our neighbors. With regard to drive-through, Mr. Rizzi, I think it's important that I clarify what I actually said. One of the main ringleaders in this expensive, well-funded campaign against the zoning is one of the investors in the Chowhound Fowling Dollar Tree Plaza. I spoke with him at length at one of the open houses. He's also one of the ones who rallied and got GRAR and Michigan Realtors on board, who've dropped well over $100,000 in the Vote No campaign. He specifically expressed frustration and didn't like the new zoning because he can't redevelop high density apartment complexes and drive-through restaurants. The 2 drive-throughs he used as examples that he wanted to be able to put in the village area as an investor of property were Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane. So it's misleading to say I'm talking about no drive-throughs as far as the zoning goes. I'm talking about what the special interest groups want and why they don't like the current zoning. Under the current zoning that we have right now, the apartment complexes behind Culver's, the apartment complexes behind Walmart, different things like that are allowed in the village area under the current zoning. Under the new zoning, they are not. So it is important that we get this new zoning to protect Cascade Township from the intense development pressures. It's also important that we get accurate information, and the real concern that this Vote No group, real estate special interests, are pushing, they have a problem with the density. They want the density allowed in the rural areas where they want to continue to have unlimited private number of homes on narrower private roads, and they don't like that the new zoning to preserve those rural areas caps the number of homes that can be built on private roads and widens the private roads by several feet to allow access by emergency vehicles. Those same special interest groups who are pushing for high density in Cascade and who have won over a couple of these trustees, even ones who sat in the subcommittee and created the brand new zoning in over 21 meetings, 2 hours apiece, and up to the point where the special interest started giving us pressure, were pro new zoning. Those special interest groups are upset because the new zoning protects Cascade Township from the high density pressure. It protects Cascade Township rural areas and residents from industrial expansion east of the airport, which leads to additional on-off ramps. We need the new zoning to preserve the Cascade that we all live in. And that is why there's been such a manipulative, conniving, misleading, and targeted, well-funded group by realtors, developers, and GRAR and Michigan and the realtors, Michigan Realtors, to oppose the zoning. So it's a lot to take. I know I sound aggressive, probably angry,
Passionate,
rude, but that's because it's important for residents and to know the work that went into it and how slimy and manipulative and well-funded the opposition is. They say one thing, but it's really about density. And we don't need to go the way of Lowell with light industrial and data centers or the way of our neighbors. We can see what happens when you go down that high density route. Vote yes to preserve Cascade. The current zoning is important. And also Don't be fooled by the scare tactics and soundbite being pushed for that position. Lastly, I want to thank the 4 trustees who stood up and voted to approve the new zoning despite the intense last minute and bullying pressure that we received from all the special interest real estate groups that came in. So thank you to the 4 trustees who stayed the course and represented residents. No more comments. I don't think it's fair to keep people hostage anymore. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Shipley makes a motion to adjourn in as much as we have thoroughly covered the agenda of today.
Support.
Motion by trustee, supported by pretty much everyone in this room. Adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carried.